Welcome to our 61st first monthly Zoom presentation. As we embark on our sixth year of Zoom presentations, we can all be very proud of the amazing library of recordings we are building. It's truly a testament to the diversity of the roadstay. I am Brian Gallagher, the president of the Society for Commercial Archaeology, and proud to be your host for tonight's presentation. Welcome to all our guests and any new people we have with us tonight. We're happy that you took the time to watch an SCA presentation, and I hope you enjoy the show. And for anyone watching the recording of this episode of the SCA's monthly presentations who is not a member of the SCA, we earnestly ask you to consider joining. Funding for the various activities of the SCA comes almost exclusively from our membership. Just visit our website at www.sca-roadside.org and follow the links. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our presenter. Isaac Jeffries' work is a look into an unseen world within the Catskills and beyond the Borscht Belt, veering into other mid-century modern remnants on the East Coast, specifically at night. His goal is to create a dreamlike world in which you can't really tell if it's 1964 or 2024. He highlights unseen mid-century aspects of the rooms and buildings we love, as well as giving us a look into spaces previously unseen by the general public for 45 plus years. Isaac is a photographer who lives and works in and around New York, New York. He grew up in the tranquil and historic Hudson Valley Catskills region and returns to the area to build his opus as much as he can. Drawn to artistic mediums from a young age, Isaac earned a photography BFA from Parsons School of Design, the new school, in 2022. Working with a variety of mediums within film, ranging from medium to large format photography, Isaac's work is a communication with the past, and oftentimes he photographs at night to achieve surreal effects within his imagery. His work involves themes of nostalgia, romanticism, and communication through space and texture. And you can check out his website at www.isaacjeffries, that's EYS.com. And his Instagram is at Isaac Jeffries, that's EYS. Now I'm going to ask Isaac to join us and start his presentation.
Thank you, Brian. Can everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up.
Yes, we can.
All right, good stuff, good stuff. Thank you, guys. Thank you to the SCA for having me. I love that this exists in the first place. For so many years of my life, I didn't know that there were people that were like-minded in terms of wanting to preserve stuff from the 1950s and the 1960s in any way, shape, or form across America. So I love that you guys exist and that we're able to all come together after COVID on Zoom and talk about some art. And I think I'm just going to get right into it because I have a lot to say, okay? So let me ask you guys this one more time. Give me a thumbs up. Can you see this screen? Okay, good stuff. All right, then we're ready to roll. So, my name is Isaac Jeffries. You guys heard the introduction, but I'm a photographer. I live and work in New York, and a lot of my work lately has been taking me to Los Angeles. So, I'm really, really into that sort of old Hollywood 1950s glamour sort of niche of the art world. And a lot of my work that I've done in the past 5 years has really been based all in and around the Catskills and the resorts that used to exist in Sullivan County and Ulster County, New York. And I'm just going to get right into it because I always give a sort of history lesson in my talks, but I think we're all kind of here because we love photos from the past as much as we love photos from now. So basically, for those of you who don't know, Sullivan and Ulster County, New York, they were home to what is known as the Borscht Belt hotels. 538 hotels and over 50,000 bungalows were recorded at one point in the 1950s. I believe it was an article in the New York Times. It was a huge vacation destination that catered primarily to East Coast American Jews, a lot of people from Long Island, a lot of people from New Jersey. This was still obviously in the heyday of roadside American travel. So this was really a one-of-a-kind resort area that existed really just between, I mean, it's like not more than I'd say a 60 or 70-mile radius. And as you can see on these brochures, they'll say it's the most popular resort area in the world. I always love saying that, something I love about the Catskills is they would make it very, very dramatic back in the 50s because it may not have been the most popular resort area in the world, but they would sure make you believe that it was. And I love that thing on the bottom right, that old sign, entering Sullivan County, the vacation spot of America. So we have to go back in time for a second to talk about how this all came about. In the 1800s, there were multiple industries that kind of went through their rise and fall in the Catskills, lumber, tanning, but something that really stuck were the resorts and the idea of wanting that sort of escape from the city, escape from the humidity. A lot of farmers that were a lot of Jewish farmers would come up from New York in search of finding land, especially in Sullivan County, that was fertile for growth in things beyond just one or two crops. And when they soon found that that wasn't really a possibility, or it would take years and years to achieve what they were wanting to achieve, they would start taking in boarders. Now, obviously, at the same time that this was going on, there was like rampant anti-Semitism going on, and Jews were not allowed to travel really anywhere beyond spaces that they were explicitly allowed in. So this really caused this sort of boom, a real like early cultural boom in the, like it says, 1890s to 1910s. And you would really just have these simple houses that were farmhouses taking in boarders from like, I don't know, 3 days to 3 weeks, maybe a month at a time. Then obviously back in the day, it was a very, very strenuous journey to get to the Catskills. This is kind of showing when it got a little bit better when they built Route 17 and it wasn't a hectic experience to get up there, but you used to have to take a train to get to the Catskills. And oftentimes the Ontario and Western Railroad, which doesn't exist here anymore, back in the day, you would take it, be on this train for 3 to 4 hours at a time. It would break down and you'd have to stand in the sun for 6 to 7 hours. Well, they would fix the train before you got back on it again, and then eventually make it to the station that you would get onto a little bus or go into a thing called a hack, which was a car that was essentially a clown car filled with six people in a million different bags, and it would take you to your resort destination. So this was really a journey. It was almost a pilgrimage for a lot of families. A lot of people obviously spent their entire years saving up for experiences in the Catskills. And I mean, the journey really made I think also the experience worthwhile and made people really want to experience more because it was so difficult to get up. Or you could also, I'm only on my screen, I'm sorry, I'm seeing everybody's faces here, so I'm not noticing on the right. You could also take the short line bus up to the Catskills, which you can still take nowadays, just so you know, but it would still be a strenuous journey. So, long story short, after all of these moments with travel boomed, after the hotel started gaining sort of notoriety and a reputation for being a real sort of haven for not only Jews, but just vacationers in general, these hotels would grow from these farmhouses and then add these new facades on, like this hotel on the left here, the Saxony Hotel, which was in Fallsburg, which they call it Sullivan County Mission style. A lot of these hotels would have this sort of Spanish-inspired facade that you would see in the 1920s and 1930s. And then on the right here, you would have a similar sort of building where you could tell it was originally something else previously, but they would outfit it with these sort of like Tudor embellishments to feel like either Eastern Europe or have that sort of country feeling. And on the right there, that's the Greenwood Inn. The thing in the middle, it says from rustic cottages to luxurious hotels. That came from the New York Times, an article I think from the 1940s, when they were really talking about the booms here. And what I love about both of these hotels is that they're not explicitly mid-century modern on the outside, but then you go in and it's just kind of this like cataclysm of 20 different design like periods at once. Both of these places had mid-century lobbies, these indoor pools that were insane, beautiful. The Greenwood Inn right here, you can see this dining room that sat hundreds and hundreds of people and was so loud, color-wise. And I'm sure in its heyday, I mean, we would walk in and you would hear talking, laughter. It was a really sort of congenial environment. Something that also happened at the same time as the hotels, like I said before, were these bungalows. So I don't really take a whole lot of photos of bungalow colonies just because it doesn't really fit within the scope of what I'm looking for within my own work. But I have to mention this because I love this photo. This is or Adler's Bungalow Colony in Greenfield Park, New York. I love this picture. I think it just represents summer leisure in the purest form. It was definitely a more sort of downtrodden, not downtrodden, but less glamorous version of the Catskills. People would cook together in these things called cook-alanes, which is Yiddish for cook alone. And a lot of amenities were shared. It was a really sort of familial experience. And then a lot of these people would end up going to the hotels at night to see the entertainment. So there was an ecosystem that was happening here. These are billboard ads on Route 17, which was known as the Quick Way. It still is known as the Quick Way around here. I mean, what you would see everywhere that you went, I love this photo in the middle, are these gigantic mega billboards full of tiny billboards that said all these amazing names: Windsor, Premier, Golden, Wadlers, Heckler. It would be everything from, something like the Flamingo, which is just kind of named to attract people, to something like the Hayden or Gilbert's, which were family names. All of these hotels were owned by families, and a lot of them were run by the woman in the family. It was a really matriarchal and kind of ahead of its time sort of formula for these hotels, but it was really, really sorry, this photo is making me like smile as I look at it. I love it so much. It wasn't your traditional Route 66 roadside destination. Again, it was really intentional. You had to go up to the Catskills for a reason. But once you got there, they had their own sort of formula that I think is really, really neat of attracting people to go to these hotels in this sort of like mid-century modern, roadside Americana context. And I love that back then the landscaping allowed you to not only see the billboard for it, but then the actual hotel in the background. So it was really a scenic wonderland back then. And I just had to include this because as the years went on, the billboards changed. And I love the simplicity and color of this. I love the fact that it's like advertising this Las Vegas aesthetic within the mountains around it. And from what I heard back in the day, a lot of these billboards were really controversial because they were mucking up the beauty. But I find that to be a little ironic because nowadays I think all of us want billboards like this to be back, where they have that sort of human hand-painted element to them. Okay, so we're going through time really quickly right now. So you're seeing these ads, or not ads, articles, everything coming up new in the Catskills, nightlife booming in Catskills, boom in Catskills. So this is in the New York Times. This is something that was regularly talked about. They had a whole resort section in the back, and there would be pages upon pages of Catskill Mountain Resort ads from everywhere from like Fleischmann's, 2 hours away from Sullivan County, all the way down to Port Jervis, which I think it's like just on the outskirts of Sullivan County. And at the same time as the sort of boom that you're having in all these hotels, you're bringing up the best of the best celebrities that are not only coming up to perform, but also to stay at the hotels. So there's Paul Newman smoking a cigarette at Grossinger's. That's a pretty iconic photo. You'd have entertainers like the Barry sisters, who's the photo right next to him. They were a Yiddish swing duo, and they kind of basically were like the Ella Fitzgerald in like the Jewish world, if that makes sense at the time. In the middle, this is a photo that really got or captured my interest in the whole era to begin with. It was Eddie Fisher, Jenny Grossinger, and Elizabeth Taylor at Grossinger's. I believe this was just after their wedding. Yeah, and then Eddie Fisher got married to Debbie Reynolds at the same hotel the year after or the year before. But there's a little bit of Hollywood drama going on here too, which I think really adds to the whole push of why I love this so much. There's so much of a story that's going on here. Eleanor Roosevelt on the bottom right there, Sammy Davis Jr. performing at the Concord. And that is indeed Lucille Ball smoking a cigarette at Grossinger's on the bottom left right there. I'm sorry, I'm probably bringing everyone's eyes in 20 different directions, but you would just see such a variety from singers to comedians. A lot of comedians got their start in the Catskills. Almost every famous comedian you can think of has a connection to the Catskills. And I find that to be so interesting. These are two of my favorite ads of all time for both the Concord Hotel. On the left here, it's advertising Judy Garland in person on Sunday, February 12th. I think this was 1961, just a bit before her infamous Carnegie Hall performance, or I guess I'd say famous, not infamous. But that was a pretty career-defining performance for her. So I love that she made it up, and so did Liza Minnelli as well in the 1990s. I found an ad for that the other day. And then on the right here, you're just seeing such a classic lineup. Tony Martin, Tony Bennett, Alan Rossi, and then Barbra Streisand, who was added on as a late addition, like a last minute addition to somebody that couldn't fill their spot for August 9th, 1963. That's pretty crazy to just get Barbra Streisand, the Barbra Streisand at 19 years old, as a filler guest. And that's just how it was here. I mean, that's the way that things went. Something that I love about the Catskills as well is the advertising. I've had the, pleasure of spending a lot of my time with not only the owners, but the descendants of Steingart Associates, which is the premier company that made every brochure and postcard in the Catskills. They had this amazing archive that I was able to dig into, and it was just really cool to see and meet the people that were responsible for creating such an amazing aesthetic. This is an advertisement for the Aladdin Hotel, and like I said, they would really exaggerate things, enter into the magic wonderland of the Aladdin. But they would really advertise these like they were your Route 66 motels. There was a lot of competition going on in the Catskills. Again, like, even though I said 538 hotels, that probably means that there's 200 big resorts that are trying to all compete to get the main crowd. So you have the Fieldston over here saying it's fun, it's fabulous, and then the El Dorado here, which is the futuristic resort. So it's like I can imagine back in the day, which one would I want to go to? It gives you this sort of like smorgasbord, is that the word? Smorgasbord of things and places to go. And I love the idea of going to a different hotel every year, trying that out too. I mean, it was a world within a world. So real quick, I'm sorry, I'm such a yapper and I'm really trying to make sure that I have time for questions in the end, but I also want to give time to all of these. So forgive me if I'm yapping a lot, but I'm going to go through some of the biggest hotels in the Catskills just to give everybody a little blast from the past moment, and in case people don't know, this is what it was here. This is Grossinger's. This is arguably, actually, definitively the most famous and iconic hotel in the entirety of the Borscht Belt. It was owned and operated by the Grossinger family, specifically Jenny Grossinger, who was like a celebrity to celebrities. When they came up to Grossinger's, they were excited to be greeted, shaking hands with Jenny Grossinger, who would greet every guest at the door when they arrived every single year until she stopped running the resort. This is the Concord Hotel. This was the largest resort in the Catskills. I wouldn't say it's the most famous, but they tried to make it seem that way. The Concord was the place that you would go if you were, more of like a, I don't know how to describe it, high class, upper class sort of echelon. You would save a lot of money to go to this place. Again, Barbra Streisand is your fill-in guest for the night, so you can understand the sort of aspect of this being like a palace, a sort of complex, its own ecosystem, its own town. It's like a self-sufficient experience at the Concord. And this was demolished in 2007. This is a shot of the Nevele Country Club slash Nevele Hotel. One of my personal favorites that we'll be seeing photos of later on. This was a really futuristic mid-century modern resort. Had that same sort of like highbrow feeling that the Concord had, but I'd say that this hotel was the most kind of forward thinking in terms of design, or one of the most forward thinking. It was really heavily like it had its own aesthetic within the mid-century modern world, and its additions always kind of communicated with each other. This is Charles and Lillian Brown's hotel in Loch Sheldrake. This was a very intensely Californian inspired resort. Charles and Lillian Brown actually owned a resort in Palm Springs in the 1940s. And a lot of these hotel owners would own resorts in Miami. So the Browns kind of deviated from that because they really went towards this sort of Hollywood feeling. As you can see, there's the fabulous Jerry Lewis Theater Club advertised. We'll be looking at that later. It's pretty amazing. This is Laurel's Hotel and Country Club on Sackett Lake. It's no longer there. It burned in 1979, but this was your quintessential Catskills resort in and of itself. Largest outdoor pool in the Catskills, I believe, up until the Grossinger's indoor pool or outdoor pool was open. And the Laurels I think it was the largest resort of its kind as well before Grossinger's opened. So this one kind of gets thrown under the rug sometimes, but I want to give it its charms or whatever. This is the Tamarack Lodge, the Smart Country Club, another really sort of forward-thinking resort that kind of mixed mid-century with Tudor, as you can see in this photograph. It was designed by Morris Lapidus. and his associate H.D. Phillips, who was kind of his sort of protege that did a lot of the Catskills resorts. I love this place. I never got to see it, but this was another one of those sort of pinnacle anchor destinations for the Catskills. Now, there are a lot of them that I left out, but I cannot go through over like 25 hotels. I want to get to some photos of a lot of other random ones before we go into my work. But I'm not leaving out like the Pines or the Raleigh or anything like that. We love all of them. But I want to go through a few photos that really inspired this project that I'm working on right now. And I want to show you guys the version of the Catskills that I see and why I love it and why I think that this should be regarded in the same way that Las Vegas is when people talk about how amazing the Stardust was, when people go to the Neon Museum there and talk about the history there. It's like this happened here too. So this is the Grossinger's indoor pool, the most iconic room in the Catskills, period. This was actually designed by the same, I think, yes, the same architecture firm that designed the UN in New York City. So it really deviated from all the other resorts. It had a Tudor sort of feeling throughout the resort. Then you go into this massive indoor pool. I mean, it was truly massive. I never got to photograph this nowadays at night, but I do remember walking into this room when I was 18 and it set off that feeling of, this there's something here. These are two of my or this is one of my personal favorite rooms, the Imperial Room lobby and rotunda at the Concord. As I was saying before, the Concord was like the most fabulous resort you could go to in the Catskills, and this room, designed by Morris Lapidus, mimics the Fontainebleau's staircase to nowhere. It's like a gigantic version of that, and the staircase to nowhere at the Fontainebleau was essentially created so that people could walk down in their furs and their minks and all of that, show their latest fashions that they got from the shop, the beauty shop that the hotel would have. And this one was kind of a three-time sort of scale of that led you to the dining room upstairs. And I love the feeling that this room gives. I love that it's completely, no windows are shown, but there's so much depth, so much character, so much color going on here. And that fountain is insane. I mean, it really is. This is the Nevele nightclub lobby and bas relief. Photo from 1958. I really, really love this wall right here. We're going to talk about it later, but it is absolutely one of the greatest pieces of mid-century modern art that I've ever seen in my existence on this planet. Honestly, it's depicting everything. Greek gods, you're having like tribal scenes going on, clowns, mythology, horses. So cool, so cool. This is the iconic Nevele Tower. This was opened in 1965. It was a round skyscraper. I think it was modeled after a building that actually exists in Waikiki, Hawaii, that was built like 5 years prior to this. But just the idea of the Catskills having this like monolith almost that really defines like a mid-century modern building. It almost feels like brutalist in a way. I love this building and I think it's super duper important. This is the Jerry Lewis Theater Club at Brown's Hotel. The theaters in the Catskills are my favorite rooms, hands down. They were cavernous, huge, colorful. This room was themed after Jerry Lewis. He was their mascot. He got his start at the Browns Hotel, but never actually performed in this room until I believe the 1980s. But it had his like signature comedy tragedy faces on the two left and right sides. So we'll look at photos of this in its contemporary as well later on. Just some exterior photos here. They had the Brown Derby nightclub named after the Brown Derby nightclub in Los Angeles. And then on the right here, the Jerry Lewis Theater Club. I love the Hollywood feeling that this hotel had. It's just teeming with life. You can see it, you can feel it in this photograph. This is the Bavanda Lounge at Laurel's Country Club in Sackett Lake. I love this. I always put this photo in my talks. I cannot stop talking about this amazing star-shaped octopus-looking ceiling light fixture that is hanging down, lurking over you. I want to know the design choices behind it. I want to know why it's purple. There's so many. I mean, I could go off into a tangent about it because it's so odd to me. But that's something that attracts me about the Catskills, and it attracts me about the whole era of especially the 50s, the things that people found to be kind of otherworldly and different and cool. They were just, I don't know, it was so much more imaginative. I cannot imagine, even in my mind, coming up with something as creative as this and putting it into a dance hall sort of room. It's so neat to me. This is your classic example of Catskills mid-century modern. Something that I love about the mid-century resorts in the Catskills, especially in the 1960s, is that they adopted this sort of style that felt a lot more streamlined, a lot less googy than you would see in the rest of the country. I think the Catskills had a really intense sort of European influence, probably due to its clientele, but also just the architects themselves really wanted to create a sort of like high class atmosphere that didn't feel like it was going to be kitschy when you were there. I mean, obviously these things kind of fell out of fashion within 10 years, but I see what they were going for, and there was definitely a very different, it was trying to kind of transport you somewhere else besides upstate New York. I think that's what the intention of this was. And I love the natural light coming in. I wish this building was still here. It's so gorgeous. But speaking of another building that I wish was still here, Shanks Paramount Hotel. My gosh. Do I even need to say anything about how amazing this is? Because I feel like we can all agree that this truly is otherworldly during the day and during the night. It looks like Las Vegas. It doesn't even look like Vegas. It looks like its own world of enchantment that you're walking into. And I love, love, love it so much. These are two photos of the lobby of the, it's not exterior, interior of the Tamarack Lodge, designed and furnished by Morris Lapidus. These are his signature bird cage sort of designs on the left. No, those are not real birds. They were just taxidermied birds. But again, a design choice that I would love to know more about. Why are there taxidermied birds in the lobby, and why do I love it so much? Why is it so cohesive with everything else? Um, I think I linger for interiors like this because the places that I've experienced, I went to like the Mid-Hudson Civic Center to see Sesame Street when I was 4 years old, and I remember that being a room with a drop ceiling, and it was gray all around. And I think I would have had a better time if I walked into a room like this where it was pink and it had this weird but amazing UFO-shaped light fixture like hanging over you, bringing you somewhere else. It's beaming you up and bringing you, I don't even know where. And I think that's what the intention was. This is the Starlight Outdoor Theater at the Shawanga Lodge in Highview. The Shawanga was another resort that I was never able to see, but very, very ahead of its time, a little bit farther away from the other Borscht Belt hotels. But this really gives me Hollywood Bowl vibes through and through. And the fact that this was just sitting in the woods of upstate New York makes it magical to me. I don't know why. It just does, you know? The indoor pool at the Hotel Gibber, checkerboard ceilings, another thing that I will never see in my lifetime created again, but I absolutely love it. So I just, this photo, this hotel, I would beam here if I could, but I just had to give a moment to the checkerboard ceiling because we need to give it that moment. Club Oasis at the Carmel Hotel. This is one of the nightclub exteriors in the 1960s. There's not much neon in the Catskills. I'll talk about that later, but I just love this exterior. I love the sort of arch going upward. I love that it has a Palm Springs feeling to it. And it really just adds to the sort of idea that these buildings were created to bring you somewhere else. The Emerald Room at the Commodore. This almost sent me into like cardiac arrest when I saw the photograph because it's a checkerboard ceiling, it's a theater, and it has these like spiky things coming out of the stage and the chandeliers. I mean, it's everything that I love in one. And I wish that I could have seen this room in its heyday as well, but it is what it is. The signage you would get in the Catskills was very humble, very, very specific. A lot of it was hand painted, hand cut. This is a Nemerson sign from the 1950s advertising the multiple orchestras and their events on the right side that are happening Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Look how many people they had just on a day-to-day basis. The life here was huge, beyond. I wanted to include this for any like people that are into neon because SCA, we all love neon. The Catskills didn't have much of it. I don't really know why. I think it did have to do with the aesthetic that they were trying to portray as kind of less glitzy on the outside, but more glitzy on the inside, if that makes sense. But two iconic hotels, the Gibber on the left and the Aladdin on the right. Very simple signage, very simple neon, but it creates a feeling, and I really love that the hotels, some hotels added this on, and I'm sure there were more neon signs that I'm totally missing right now, but it wasn't something you would see very often in the Catskills. Something that you would see though, and this is leading us into my work, so don't worry. If you're still here, we're about to get into the 2020s now. But what you would see by the 1960s were scenes like this. On the left, this is the Swan Lake Hotel in Swan Lake, New York. On the left, you see the old social hall, casino, theater. That's what they called it back in the day in the 1920s. I believe this building was built in the 20s, used through the 30s and 40s, and then maybe converted into something else in the 50s. I'm not sure if it was still open at this point. But on the right, they tacked on this little mid-century modern addition for people to stay in, probably with what looks to be, it's if it's four on this side, 8 rooms total. And I love that you would just see like this clash, this insane clash of the modern and the old, quote unquote, kind of just living in sort of harmony. You know, the Catskills wasn't really about tearing down and building back up. It was more about just adding on and on and on and on. So it's like if you love the past like I do, you're seeing so many different eras at once. So this is unfortunately an aspect of the Catskills that I do need to talk about because it's the Catskills. So the story of the Catskills goes, or the story goes that in the 1960s and the 1970s, I'd say early 70s, it really reached a boom that was so unattainable to kind of maintain, especially with the way that tourism was changing in life, the way that the social structures of things were changing in life. Jews were able to vacation other places. Air conditioning was available. You could take a plane to like Maui or something and enjoy vacation there. So going upstate for an hour and a half to these kind of old school hotels, especially for like the younger generation of kids that their parents went to it and they wanted their kids to go, it just wasn't seen as something that was in fashion and good taste. So what you started to see was people going other places, and because of that, change in vacation tastes alters Catskill scene. Foreclosure sale signals an end of an era for family. Demolition begins. You know, resort's death darkens the view. Sold as meditation center, seized in foreclosure. It was, I'm sure, I mean, this was the 1970s and 80s, so I was not alive, but it really left a mark on the entire area. I mean, the entirety of Sullivan County was built upon these hotels. So once this happened, the idea that people were starting to toy with in their heads was, what do we do now? What's next for this area? And thankfully, I'm happy to say now that tourism is kind of back in a different sort of way. But this caused a lot of these hotels to become abandoned and sit vacant for years. Now, these are photos taken by John Margulies, the iconic Americana roadside photographer who's all over the Library of Congress. And he went up to the Catskills in the late 70s and captured what was left over back then. So it's been about 40 years since these photos were taken. I don't think any of these buildings exist anymore. But something that kind of molded itself into the sort of grand scope of Catskills vacationing was that you were going to start seeing abandoned buildings everywhere you go, and that's how you knew you were in the Catskills. And I think it's kind of neat in a way, especially for a brain like me to, you know, be driving around in this sort of world that I can create where there's an abandoned building here, 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 but something open here. It's like it's part of the fabric of the area almost. And at the same time, the hotels that didn't close were a lot of them were either sold as meditation centers or a lot of them became yeshivas or Jewish camps in the summer for the Orthodox population that would start vacationing up here. And on the left here is a photo from the 70s of the Laurel Park Hotel with its old stucco facade and these two students studying out on the lawn in front. And then on the right, you're seeing a lot of Hebrew signage starting to appear among English signage. So, you know, in a way, it still stayed not culturally Jewish, but it did still stay Jewish in the Catskills. But the evolution was very, very, you know, quick and different and almost unexpected for a lot of people. So we have to go into the 2010s, 2020s now because this is where the good stuff begins. Or at least what I'm trying to attempt to make the good stuff. So this is a photo I took in Grossinger's in 2017. This is a photo I shot on a film camera. It was just a point and shoot. And I was 17 years old. I'm 25 now. I just turned 25 the other day. I was 17 years old and I was feeling the ambiance, the excitement of the room. There was a whole ecosystem happening here. There was a cloud in the ceiling. You couldn't see it in this photo, but like a cloud, plants growing. The floor was ice because, you know, water had gotten in. And this is the room that really jumped off the sort of inspiration for the rest of the work that I do, but I had to include this. It's too iconic. So in 2020, I remember this was December 2020. I was really fed up with the way that life was going for me. I was going to school online at Parsons, which was art school, and really frustrated that, I couldn't see people in person. I had been photographing these resorts for a few years at this point and was kind of bored. I wanted to find something that really communicated how I saw the past. I also think this is fitting. Side note, it's getting dark because I'm in New York right now. It's getting dark, so we'll all be in the dark together by the end of this. But I wanted something that communicated that sort of longing for the Catskills that I felt because I started, once I really got deeply into the history of this area and, growing up an hour away from here, started going here, it became, a real sort of issue for me that this didn't exist anymore. And the only way to communicate that sort of longing, I think, was the addition of lights. That's what I originally tested out. I would look at these postcard photos and wonder why they're so golden and beautiful and what made these rooms look the way that they did and why don't they look like that now? And then I realized it really was lighting and obviously a little bit of upkeep to the property and stuff. But look at what three lights did to this photograph. Imagine it without the three lights. It would just kind of be like a stagnant sort of hull of a building with nothing going on. But this was the first ever photo that I took that was part of the series. And I remember the like visceral reaction I had when I saw this. I put these lights in there. And yes, I was trespassing, but since then I have gotten a lot of permission, I'd say for a good 90% of the places that I photograph. And so this really carried through until now. This is in the outdoor arched pool at the Pines Hotel in South Fallsburg, one of the most iconic pools in the Catskills. This was an arch that went over this sort of kidney bean shaped 1960s pool. I loved the idea of adding this sort of ambient smoke to the photographs. I just think it really, really made light travel. I love bending light, working with light. I again love what light does to spaces like this because a lot of them are heavily vandalized, and I really was trying to portray the resorts as, obviously they're still closed, but I don't want somebody that went to these resorts in the 50s, 60s, 70s to look at these photos and feel sadness. I want them to feel kind of intrigue or maybe a little bit of a happy memory or something. So I always make sure when the time is right to photograph on a clear night when you get that sort of intense blue going on in the skies when it's like 8:45 rolls around into 9 p.m. And this really carried through. I ended up going to, it would be beyond the abandoned hotels. I would go and find these hotels that converted themselves into camps. And this is actually a Polish resort that existed in the Catskills in Canosa Lake called the Valley View House, but it had the same architect that did all of the other Borscht Belt resorts. So to me, it kind of counts, especially architecturally. And when I took this photograph, it was actually being used during the summertime for I think there were like three or four families living in it or something for the 3 month period. And I love that it retained all of its original 1960s fabulousness. I mean, it's a little bit beaten down here and there, but you still have that super duper cool driftwood chandelier, these huge plate glass windows, and that little zigzag thing going up the side. So cool. And then I had to add a light on to really add that sort of ambience. This is the card room at Shanks Paramount Hotel. We saw photos of this earlier, but in 2021, I remember I went past this at night. This is the only thing that was left from this hotel. The lights were on, and I slammed on the brakes, went into the property, and I was like, I need to speak to whoever the owner is here. I need to get photos tonight. It's gonna happen. I'm serious about this because this is something that cannot be missed. And I'm really happy I got to photograph it because a year later, the building was gone. Without any of us knowing, the building was gone. And to me, it was one of the most amazing buildings I've ever seen in my life, to be honest. Just the idea of this existing in this sort of way and just kind of these windows existing purely for design and aesthetic sake. So cool, so cool. Um, I started feeling this sort of because I've always had a connection to nature and sort of the land that I grew up in, which was the Hudson Valley and obviously the Catskills too. So I love the way that nature interacts with a lot of these places. I think there's this really poetic quality that places like this bungalow colony, this was in Monticello, have. This is just an outdoor pool, kidney bean shaped, but it's the addition of that light and that sort of beauty of the blooming flowers, that are slightly, I think it was September when I took this, they're slightly starting to die a little bit, but there's like a story going on here. And I like that it kind of gives you that ambient feeling of people being there, but I don't want it to feel ghostly, if that makes sense. I just want it to feel alive. This is the Polynesian indoor pool at the Stevensville Hotel in Swan Lake. I love those diamond relief moments going on the wall in the back. I love the sort of boomerang shape that's going on in the ceiling. Again, just setting up lights and really trying to enhance these mid-century details that were going on in rooms like these, because the indoor pools in the Catskills, I don't think there's anywhere else in the country that had this many indoor pools within one region. So there's a lot of design to be captured here and a lot of thought that was put into these resorts. And I thought, if there was so much thought put into the advertisements, the buildings, all of that, I can't just capture it with a flash. I want to put, I want to make something that really feels like an experience. This is the Tropicana indoor pool at the Nemerson Hotel in South Fallsburg. This became a girls' camp. This room was not used for over 30 years. I did not know this still existed. I did not know that mural was still back there, or those original details. It's not the most glamorous room, but let me tell you, walking into this room not knowing it existed, crazy. And then a year later, completely stripped, gone. And now the room I think is just like it's general storage. They covered the pool, but I was able to connect with Stacy Nemerson, who's a descendant of the owners of the Nemerson Hotel, and bring her in here as it was getting gutted, and she was able to get an indoor pool sign that was hanging up from one of the beams there. So little moments of joy amongst the sad realities of time kind of moving forward, This is the Pompeii pool at the Raleigh Hotel in South Fallsburg. Obviously, a mid-century indoor pool themed after Pompeii, which I love. I love the column details. The columns are actually holding up the Kennedy wing, which sat above it. This room actually still does exist. This resort is now the HCS resort. It's kind of been in flux over the years, and now it is a resort that I think it primarily caters to the Orthodox that come up from the city in the summertime, but they've kept this room looking exactly as it did in the 1960s, which I think is pretty admirable. This is the high rise at the Nevele. You guys may have seen this on Instagram when the talk was advertised. Long story short, also, I'm not timing myself, so I'm going to start going a little quicker here, but I hope you guys are interested. Long story short, this building had to take the photograph, had to. We saw the photo from before, nine-story building in the Catskills that was modeled after a building in Hawaii. I went up 10 stories back in, what was it, 2023? Maybe, no, 2022, April 2022. Yes. I remember it like it was yesterday because you can't forget when you're going up and down 10 stories in the pitch black in an abandoned building like this. But I had to do it. It was a photo worth capturing. I can only imagine what people from the road were thinking when they saw this building with lights up in it. But to me, I mean, it's a success in my book because I feel like you're seeing life, You're not seeing the broken glass, you're seeing movement, you're seeing the wind, you're seeing the beautiful blue sky. That's what the Catskills was to me at least. I mean, not that I ever lived it, but that's what I imagined the Catskills to be. This is a photo I took last year at the Jerry Lewis Theater at Brown's. This room still exists. It's sitting along Route 52, stagnant. I'm not sure who the owners are, but I'm respectfully taking photos inside, so I feel a little bit okay. I feel a little bit okay trespassing in cases like this. The model in the photo is my friend, nightlife star in New York City, Verily Westwood, who I've been taking photos of in the resorts. It's been kind of a way that I've evolved my work over the past few years, but I really love the idea of involving people in my photographs now and seeing how that plays out. I love this room though. I mean, I love the reds. I love the chandelier. I love the things that are left over. It looks like it's set up for a pageant. And I feel like if you could zoom in on that sort of middle stage, it would look like nothing has changed. This is the handball court at the Echo Hotel in Ellenville. I took this photo literally last week. So these are all taken on film. These are taken on my Hasselblad from the 1960s. I get the film developed and then I scan the film by hand, normally in Kingston at the Center for Photography at Woodstock. Shout out to them, they're great. But this was a photo I've been kind of looming over for years. I really wanted to get a photo of a handball court that was left over and still had the sort of hotel name etched into it or left over. And within 3 or 4 years, I'd say you won't be able to see the Echo Hotel on that. So I'm really happy that I was able to capture that the other day. But it's nice to include some new work. This was taken 2 months ago at the Pines. This is the exterior of the mid-century modern pool wing that they had. The Pines has been on and off burning down the last few years, which is kind of a sad reality that a lot of these resorts kind of succumb to. But this is something that was left over from all the rubble, and I really wanted to just illuminate it and make it feel kind of, maybe this one I'm okay with this one feeling a little ghostly because there's a lot of feelings going on here, but it's not easy to bring this space necessarily back into the past. But I do love that it's almost giving these spaces a second life for a moment. It's activating them for a second, you know? This is backstage at Kutcher's Country Club in Monticello. Loving the houndstooth wallpaper on the right side. And on the left side, there is a photo of, or not Jerry Lewis, Jerry Seinfeld standing outside of this room right after he performed at Kutcher's. And just to have moments like that, knowing that I'm standing where one of these like comedy legends or artists, stood, spoke, sang, it's really a magical feeling. Like especially in places like this is the Stardust Room at the Nevele, built in 1957. This has seen everybody that you could think of. I love this boomerang, by the way, at the top of the stage here. But when I'm in these rooms alone, I'm thinking about how, when I'm putting these lights up, I'm getting to retell this sort of story that I didn't really live and experience, but it's almost kind of coming through me, if you will. And it's cool to be kind of the only person in a space that's meant for thousands of people. It's like it's a very not eerie, just sort of like profound feeling of like it's so grand here. It's so cool, and you're activating something that people just don't even know is there anymore. This is the mural staircase at the Nevele. This is that amazing bas relief I was showing you guys before. This did not look like this when I was originally photographing it. I had to go back in, paint over all the graffiti back to this sort of like tan color, and then I went in with a ladder. This was during my very ambitious years. I'm not as ambitious as I used to be, but I went in with a ladder with permission, by the way, um, and painted that sort of section up there of all the people that are holding on to each other's hands. And I think it just really like communicates the feeling of what that whole art piece was supposed to feel like. But it's funny when you see the contrast after this sort of intense renovation tan that they gave to this art, adding a little bit of color, it tells a story. It brings things to life, you know? This
Now, Isaac, just before you go on, we got running a bit late because we've got lots of questions.
All
Uh,
right, you know what? I'd say we're about like 5 slides away from being done. I'll go quick.
if you can wrap it up in 5 minutes, that would be great.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. And thank you guys for your questions, by the way. This is a view of the lobby at the Stevensville Hotel, now used as a camp in the summertime. Loving the pink here, loving the Vegas feeling here. The Starlight Room at the Stevensville, another one of my favorite rooms in the Catskills. This room actually had the power still running. This was a room that I did not know still existed. Was able to walk into it. It was stuck in 1964. The light, I mean, that spider shaped, you know what I'm saying. It's like it overwhelms me still to even think about this room. And I love it, love it, love it so much. This is the exterior. I lit it up a little bit. Some of the signage still remains. I actually photoshopped that to be red, yellow, and blue, but you guys get the idea of what's going on. I think we're a few slides away from the end, so don't worry, guys. Just to wrap up, these are a few more photos. The indoor pool wing at Klein's Hillside Hotel in Parksville. Another hotel that, this pool was only open for 1 year until 1965. Then the hotel became a summer camp, and it's still a summer camp today, but they've kept it in original condition. So you're walking into this 1965 room, and it's like writings on the wall, you know? Carmel Hotel. This is now used as a theater camp in the summer called Stage Door Manor. Checkerboard ceiling. There's so much more to say about all these photos, but I really want to get to the questions. So, signage, da da da. Da da da. You get it. I want to end with this before we get to the questions. This is the last photo I just wanted to include, just because all the photos were vacant and void of people. This is the outdoor pool and casino at the Grand Mountain Hotel. It's a hotel that's owned by a Russian family now. And in the summertime, they actually still use this. They don't use the building, but they use this pool. They brought it back from abandonment. And when I took this photo, it felt like a Slim Aarons photo. And I felt like it was capturing that life is still here in the Catskills. And that's, I guess, the goal of what my work is. And I'm excited that you guys have questions. So let's hear them. Let's go.
Well, thank you so much, Isaac. That
No
was just
problem.
quite remarkable. I've never seen anything like it. There's one comment in here because you'll get all these comments. It says, we've had 60, your number 161 presentation. Somebody says this is the best presentation they've seen in this series. So that's pretty high praise.
Thank you.
So
Thank you very much. I
congratulations.
appreciate it.
Let's go through these questions. One question from Sherman Clark says, can you talk a bit about the long tables like at the Jerry Lewis Theater Club? I can't imagine people today wanting to sit so close to others.
That's a great question because I think about that too. When you look at the
Sorry, I turned off your screen sharing.
oh no, you're all good. I was like, hold on, where did everybody go? Okay,
Oh,
we're
man.
good. We're good.
Actually, just before you go on to Isaac, you're very dark. It's dark outside right now, and
You know
you're
what?
very dark.
We
So
got the
you
lighting.
can
We got
have,
the lighting
yeah,
now.
that's a little better. Now you're suitably shadowed and look rather mysterious.
We're talking about the dark in the dark, so
Yeah.
it's only fair, right? Anyways, so long story short, I mean, I look at those postcard photos from the 60s and I see, 550 people sandwiched together, likely smoking cigarettes and drinking drinks. And I can only imagine I would hopefully be drunk enough to enjoy how close I was to other people, but I really can't imagine how that was. It definitely looks lively, but the idea of, waiters and waitresses trying to get through crowds like that while there's tables upon tables upon tables upon tables next to each other. It's it's pretty insane. It's pretty insane.
Well,
So,
I would say that recently restaurants are really adopting that style of eating again. You sit at long tables, and the idea is you might start up a conversation with people that are sitting beside you, which you can't do if you're at a square table just for your group.
yeah. And you know what? I bet back then too, like everything, life was different. We all know life was different. So people were talking more. People were expecting to be sat next to somebody random. So I think it's just the general flow of people wanting privacy more now that like would make me personally probably not want to be sandwiched. But I would. Why not? It's the
Yeah, why
experience.
not? Peter Ives asks, so I wonder who the Black Girl group was in the photo with the several other entertainers. We don't have that picture up here, but I wonder if you know off.
Oh, that was the Shirelles.
Oh, the Shirelles. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
the
Okay.
Shirelles at the El Dorado. Yeah,
All right.
cool.
Now, Peter Glazer, and you'll most certainly know this, talks about the late John Margolis wrote about the resorts of the Catskills. Maybe that was 1979. So I'm sure you've seen that.
I actually know what's crazy. I haven't seen the actual book, but I've seen almost every photograph that I would assume is in the book. So I want to get my hands on that book though. So thank you for reminding me because there's so much information to process about this stuff. It's like you forget when someone recommends something and go in one ear out the other. I will remember that.
Right.
So
Paul Homan asks, what kinds of light sources did you use at the abandoned places that had no electricity?
So the this is why I really do need to work on how I'm gonna get all this out in 40 minutes because there's just so much to say, I guess. The the lighting, it's it started out with just me getting these bulbs that you can get from Home Depot that, they're like these LED bulbs. You put them into your like regular lights that you would have in your room and they charge and they're made for like emergencies like if there's a storm and your power goes out it stays on for 6 hours. So those were originally what I started using, and then I started moving on to other like LED related lights that were kind of like square shaped. And at this point I'm using a mixture of like those original lights and then studio lighting that I have now. But it was a Home Depot purchase, which is crazy that it really just goes to show it's like you don't need $1 million and a budget of, well, that's the budget, I guess, but $1 million and a team of 25 people to create something amazing. It's just what you do with kind of what you find.
Yeah, absolutely. We have so actually, Gary Dan asks, how did you get into the Stevensville? If that's kind of
Hi,
specific.
hi, Gary. First of all, his family owned the Shawanga Lounge, so he's super duper cool. Um, the Stevensville, this long story short, I can't give away all my secrets, but for years, have been very persistent with properties that I want to get into, like beyond persistent. And to make a long story short, it's just like once I go, I'm going every day from 18 until like 22, 23, knocking on doors and calling people, either finding the rabbi that owns the building now, the groundskeeper that connects me to the rabbi. So it's all like through word of mouth, but also through me finding the right person and searching for the right person. But when I really get my like head, kind of set on photographing one of these resorts, I, especially a few years ago, I could not physically do anything but do like make it so that I can photograph that. I would stop at nothing. And the Stevensville was the one resort where I was like, there's no way I'm not getting into this resort. I know that there is beauty that lies within. And oh my God, the things that are there, insane. But yeah, just persistency, being a
Yeah,
nomad,
absolutely.
stalking a little bit of property.
What did Woody Allen say? Success is 90% persistence, something like that. I'm not quoting properly.
Exactly.
Stacy Nemerson Palant, who I'm assuming has a connection with the resort, says, Isaac, you are the best in helping to preserve the past. So there's a very nice comment, a very fine compliment.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm just gonna add on to not the compliment, but the in terms of preservation, I don't want to plug anything, but Stacy and Marissa Scheinfeld, me and Louis Inglaterra are all part of the Borscht Belt Historical Marker Project. So while I'm doing all this, we're putting up physical historical markers in the Catskills well, I think we're going to do 25 total, but we have 11 in the ground now in towns that Borscht Belt hotels existed in. So that's been a whole separate preservation moment that I forgot to plug at the end of my talk, but just wanted to mention that.
Okay, and if there's something you do want to plug, then we definitely want to hear about that.
Of course.
Um, Barkev says, beautiful work. Which photograph of yours was the most difficult to capture?
Good question. Let me think. Oh gosh. It wasn't included. Well, there were two. It wasn't included though. But there's a photo of the Kutcher's Country Club stage, and it was like 5 degrees in like March. I was getting dripped on from like ceiling fluids and stuff like that. It was really a hazardous environment, to be honest, and it felt like I was going to get sick, and I did afterwards. So I do like masks and stuff now. Don't worry, guys. But I would say that one was difficult because it took just hours, or the Stevensville Starlight Room. Spent 2 days clearing a room out, and then 6 hours actually setting up the lights for the photograph. So, I like the difficulty though. It's like it's such a fun challenge, you know?
Challenge, yeah.
Yeah.
Michael Peisno says, and this was, he mentioned this before the presentation, how many of the viewers can sing the song, At the Nevele, There's a Lot to Do? Do you know that song of Isaac?
Yeah, I would see I can sing, but I'm not gonna do that for you guys right now. I'm sorry. It's too corny. It's too corny. But we do love that song. We love that song. It's so iconic, you know?
Now, I have a question for you, and that is, you mentioned at the beginning that these were generally resorts for the Jewish community because often they were excluded from other resorts. But could Gentiles go to these resorts too, and did they?
Yeah, so I think I love that Peter Chester, also who's in this talk right now, is like a great historian on the Catskills. He knows everything. I'd say by like the late 1950s, early 1960s, like at the Concord, it was probably like 50-50, because they were
Okay,
really appealing to, if Barbra Streisand is performing, that's at that point she was also like a like you would get Judy Garland, Barbra Streisand, like things like that that were kind of like general Hollywood stars. So I think especially in the 60s and 70s and 80s, they were trying to appeal to everybody, because once that sort of like real like Jewish vacation period ended and they wanted to survive, they had to appeal to families, conventions, everything. So, you know,
right.
everybody went to these places, really, everybody.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's all the questions. I'll just give everybody a chance to think. There's tons of comments here, which I'll forward to you, so you can read the comments everybody else has
Thank
already
you.
read them. And
Thank
people
you.
are just loving this talk. So
Oh,
you,
someone said, is there a possibility of doing a book of the, I'm guessing they're saying photos. I don't know if they mean new or old, but a photo book is happening. I've been saying it for like 2 years now, but I'm waiting for the correct publisher in the right moment because I want to give it the moment it deserves and give it the reach it deserves. But look out for that because it will happen. It will happen. I promise.
well, if you, when that does happen, Isaac, please send us a notice of it. And because often book publishers want to have pre-orders
Totally.
of these books.
Listen, I'll
And
come back and do a book talk. So don't
yeah,
worry.
well, I mean, that might be a little while, but if you're at a point where you need pre-orders, then we can advertise that at the SCA as a little, as one of our thank yous for doing this great job. So I'm gonna wrap it up now, Isaac. Again, thank you so much for this absolutely excellent presentation. The work is of the highest quality and very, very evocative. You should be very proud of yourself.
Thank
And
you.
the Borscht Belt Historical Project is very lucky to have you too. And we get their information coming all the time.
It's a good thing. If you guys want to follow the Instagram, we're at Borscht Belt Historical Markers. So you'll find it. You guys will find
Yeah.
it.
Well, we had what's her name? Not Marcia.
Well,
What's
you had Marissa. Yeah, you had Marissa on.
yeah, we had her on about 2 years ago. She did one
Yeah.
on the Heritage Project,
She was
which was also good, but I think this one was better, to tell you the truth. Don't tell her that.
she may be here. She may be here.
Yeah,
So
maybe she's here. She probably is.
it's okay, Marissa. We love
I'd
you.
just like to take 1 minute to remind everybody about next month, when on Wednesday, July the 16th at 8 Eastern and 5 Pacific, we will welcome Marcia Bricker Halperin, and we'll step back into the nostalgia and grit of the 1970s New York City through poignant black and white photographs of the self-service restaurants that provide nourishment in more ways than food for a generation. Now, SCA members will get the relevant details and registration link for that May talk by email, and then others can register through the SCA website directly. And I mean, I'm going on a limb here. I'm not Jewish, but I'm thinking that a lot of these places in New York City were also catering to the Jewish community. So this will be like how the
It's a
Jewish
segue.
people were took their vacations, and next month will be how Jewish people satisfied their hungers in New York City. So it'll be very, very interesting. Thank you again to all our guests for spending some time with us. If you are not a member, you will receive an email shortly inviting you to join, and I'll enjoy all the benefits of membership. And also keep in mind that the tonight's presentation will be available probably tomorrow as a recording on the SCA's website. So anybody that you think would like to watch it or should watch it, you can just refer them to that and it'll be there. It's free for all. Is there any last words you would like to say, Isaac?
Thank you. And I'd say may the borscht be with you, but that's kind of corny. But I will be, as long as these places are around, I will be capturing them and hopefully, we get more people interested in not only the Borscht Belt, but just the 1950s, 60s architecture, retro Americana, all that. I think it's coming back, it's coming back, but
Definitely is.
one step closer. So
It definitely is, and not just the Borscht Belt, but all over the country. Like next year is the 100th anniversary of Route 66, which is the same type of deal, except spread out over a long ways. And there'll be lots and lots of events and celebrations commemorating that anniversary too. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording and say good night, everybody, and look forward to seeing you all next month.
thank you for coming. Thank you for having me, Brian. I appreciate it.